All right, so I've kind of been theorizing potential builds for the hardcore server. Now, if you're unaware, for the hardcore server, artifacts are actually unlimited. So, artifact equip limits are lifted, allowing players to power up like never before. Essentially, you're allowed to equip as many artifacts as you want for the hardcore server. Now, what this means is that there's a lot of build potential, and I wanted to kind of flesh out what I think would be the best build for the Rapier, or at least the Evade Rapier, for the hardcore server. So what I've done is I've made a build here. Now, this isn't set in stone because I can't actually equip the new artifacts yet, but I'm going to talk about the build and where I think some of the artifacts make the most sense. So for the weapon, it's either going to be Inferno or Aconite. This, I guess, doesn't really matter, but I think in terms of damage potential, the Inferno is better. And for our main Rapier, it's either going to be Finisher or a crafted Rapier. And I'll have to test this out in game. From my testing before, a crafted Rapier tends to perform slightly better than the Finisher when it comes to non-bleed setups, but I will have to probably test this over time. Last time I tested this, though, that was the case. But if we are going off of the Finisher setup, then we're going to run Inferno and Finisher. This will allow us to gain 15% more damage from Inferno, and then Finisher with Disdained will allow us to deal a ton of damage, plus the 15% more damage to bleeding targets. So that's why we're going to spec into Finalize on the Rapier tree, and as well pick up Unnerring. I don't normally run this setup, but this is the setup you want to use with Finisher. Alright, so for the rest of the gear, we're going to want to get the old crown, and the old crown is going to give us more attributes. So it says plus 10. I'm going to assume it's plus 11 because with the, I'll just do this for now. Attuned leather pants. When it's gear score 700, it gives you plus 10. However, if you go to gear score 725, it gives you plus 11. So I'm going to assume that the plus 10 is for 700 gear score, but we're actually looking at plus 11 for 725. So that's pretty decent. I mean, if you pair that with the attuned leather pants, you're looking at getting an extra plus 22 extra attributes to everything. And I'll go over the attributes in a second here, but let's keep going over the gear. So we're going to use attuned leather pants plus the new crown, and then we're also going to use wing leather shoes. This will give us a increase of 10% damage while we are hasted, and thanks to the Rapier with swiftness, we're going to have infinite haste, so 3% haste for 4 seconds on Rapier hits. So essentially, whenever you're attacking an enemy, you'll have haste, and therefore you will have 10% increased base damage. We're also going to use the new gloves, not the quick draw gloves that are shown here. We're instead going to be using the Lich gloves. This will give us Empower. It pairs pretty nicely with the Rapier. However, the only downside to this is it is an Empower, so it's not a base damage increase, and it's pretty easy to get Empower capped, especially in group content. So that's the only downside to this, but you'll have a ton of Empower from this. So essentially, if you do, evade into a flurry, into a light attack, or evade into a light attack, just the general rotation, you'll always have a plus 4% Empower. So that's pretty good. Or I guess it's better than I thought, because the Empower, I thought the Empower was removed. Oh yeah, okay, never mind, it is removed. All stacks are lost on a basic attack. So evade into a light attack, unfortunately, you will only gain that plus 4% Empower. You're never going to get more than plus 4%, but hey, I mean, 4% is still pretty good. I don't know the rest of the perks, by the way, for these. I'm assuming they probably have, a combination of either health, enchanted ward, refreshing. So we don't know those just yet, But yeah, those are the Lich Gloves. We'll definitely be using that for this build. And then we also want to be using Featherweight in order to allow ourselves to actually use another medium headwear, because if we weren't using Featherweight, we wouldn't actually be able to use the old crown since it's medium. And wing leather shoes and attuned leather pants are also both medium, and that would put us over the threshold of light armor, and it's very critical. We want to be in light armor, so that's why we have to use Featherweight. I was thinking of potentially getting rid of the Lich Gloves in replace of something else, because 4% in power, it's good, but it's not the greatest. But I couldn't really find anything else, so for now, we're probably just going to stick with the Lich Gloves. For the jewelry, looking at basically just a crafted amulet, I was trying to figure out if there would be an option to use something else, but realistically, I think just a crafted amulet is probably just the best play. I mean, if we look at, let's see, artifacts, amulets. So you have either the Lost Stopwatch, which is for tanks, so we're not going to use that. Ankh or Phoenix are the two options. Phoenix is an option that I was considering because it allows you to survive if you get killed, and obviously, you know, in hardcore, that's a pretty big deal. So potentially there's a case to be made to run Phoenix. Ankh, there's also a definite case to be made to run this. The only problem with running Ankh is that your lifesteal is going to be 25% weaker, and I'm imagining that this build is going to heavily rely on lifesteal because obviously Flurry, Bleaching Flurry is such a strong ability, and especially in hardcore, you really want your lifesteal to be as boosted as possible. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough choice. So I'm, in my opinion, just running a crafted amulet with health and divine, and then, you know, a random protection perk depending on whatever you're doing is probably the best option. Next, we're going to run Elemental Band. This will give us just an Empower increase. So it also has Keen Awareness, Hardy, and then we're going to put Leeching on it. That will give us extra self-sustain. Leeching is probably one of the most important perks because in hardcore, you want to survive. So being able to leech health is very important. For the earring, it's probably going to be Endless Thirst or Crafted Earring. I think Endless Thirst is pretty decent just because you can have extra healing power. The only downside to this is that your potions will cool down slower. So that's kind of a trade-off, but I don't think it really matters. I mean, normally, even when I play on the regular servers, I don't drink potions too much. So you can pretty much just rely on using Rapier Flurry as kind of like a potion in itself. So that's pretty much the gear. Now for the attributes, this is very baseline, by the way. I'm probably going to expand on this spreadsheet eventually once we actually get into the hardcore server. But I think the best attribute split, now this is also including the plus 11 attributes you're getting from the old crown. So you're essentially going to have a ton of attributes to work with. And we're going to be running 100 con, 50 focus, 268 int, 372 dex, and 27 strength. So our baseline's 27 without putting any stats into it because we're getting plus 5 on a base. Then we're also getting plus 11 from attuned, and then plus 11 from the old crown. So that's 22 plus 5 is 27. And then we're at 372 dex. Ideally, we probably don't need to be at 372. Maybe we drop it down. These stat splits probably could be finalized a little bit better, but realistically, they're as good as you can probably get. And we want to get 50 focus for the extra lifesteal. You could consider potentially running this setup, which is what I have here, which you're going to be running less con. So you're not going to have 100 con, which is going to give you a lot more room to work around. But in trade-off, you'll have a ton more int, and that will in turn be dealing more damage, so your lifesteal will be a lot higher because lifesteal is based on damage dealt. So I think that's about it for this build. I'll probably make more videos in the future as I think of more potential hardcore builds, but it's kind of cool that you can make new builds that revolve around a bunch of different artifacts, so you're not necessarily limited by that anymore. So anyways, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one.